Hey everybody, I hope you're all having a fantastic day today. My name is Chuck Black and welcome to my studio. So today I'm going to talk to you about the canvas that I use, and I'm going to show you one simple trick that can turn any store-bought canvas, whether that's a cheap canvas or expensive canvas, into an amazing canvas. Probably more often a cheaply bought canvas or a more inexpensive canvas, because typically the cheaper canvases we buy have a rougher or coarser texture. And so a lot of us might not be able to afford expensive canvas, but even sometimes still, I search for the highest quality canvas myself, but at the most affordable price. So sometimes there's some really nice canvases that go on sale, and I like to go ahead and just try them out. But not always do they have a nice, smooth, fine woven texture. And so a lot of the questions I get is, how do I achieve those nice smooth blends in a lot of the videos that I do, especially with acrylic paints, because that can be very difficult to achieve a nice smooth transition from color to color when using a quick drying paint like acrylics. So I've learned to apply this one simple trick that can turn a coarse surface into a beautiful surface, and a surface that's very easy to work with. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. All right, so we've got our store-bought canvas, and if you look at it up close, kind of in the light, does this look familiar? Sort of a coarse texture, and your first thought is going to be, well, it's kind of hard to blend on because that texture canvas just doesn't really work well with smooth blends, or at least it's going to add a lot of extra work to your workload. So what I do is I apply 2 to 3 layers of gesso to the canvas, but how you apply it makes all the difference. So applying it with a paintbrush is not going to give you the results, maybe not as easy or as quickly. I don't think it gives you as good a results as this method. So I don't like applying the gesso with a paintbrush. Instead, what I like to use is a joint knife. So if you don't know what a joint knife is, it's basically similar to, say, a paint scraper. It's a very thin piece of metal with a nice, smooth, and flat surface. These can run from anywhere from $5 to $15, depending on how nice of one you want to get. The nicer you get, the smoother the edge is going to be. It's a higher quality steel, and there's not going to be as many imperfections. So I like to go with a bit of a nicer one. And the reason I choose something like this joint knife over a gesso brush or a paint brush is because what this knife is going to allow me to do is, once I apply my gesso to the canvas, I can scrape the excess off the top of the canvas, filling in the crevices. So I like to use a joint knife. I think this is the key to prepping the canvas the way that I do it. Now, the gesso that I'm using today is a liquitex professional grade gesso. And this is the first time that I've used this gesso. I believe it's going to be just fine. If I shake the can, I can see that it's more of a liquid form. It's not a very thick gesso. I think this is also the key to prepping the canvas the way that I do it. Is a thick gesso is going to be harder to work with. It's going to be harder to smooth that out and get the effect that you want. So I like a kind that you can more or less pour onto the canvas. I've normally used some different brands, such as Frederick's. I really loved Frederick's before, but I recently bought a bottle, and it was all kind of coagulated inside. It was very spongy. It looked like it was expired, so it was just unusable. So I went ahead and bought this brand, Liquitex Professional Gesso, and so this is what I'm going to use today. I don't think it's that important what type of gesso, but do make sure that you can pour it on. And so I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Yeah, just like that. So that makes it really easy. And so basically all I do is pour on a very generous amount of gesso to the canvas, and I take my joint knife and push it around so that the entire surface gets a nice even coat. It's going to be very thick. But we want to make sure that we fill in every corner and every crevice of the canvas. So once I've got most of the canvas covered with gesso, what I want to do next is basically scrape off all of this excess. And of course, we don't want to waste any of the excess gesso, so I take the cap off of my jar of gesso. I take my joint knife. I pick up the excess. And I scrape it back into the bottle. Once I have most all of the gesso scraped off of the canvas, I take my paper towel or rag and I start to clean up my knife so that I can get rid of any of the ridges or bumps that are left behind. I make sure I switch directions with the knife to get a nice even coat and make sure there are no imperfections in my application. Once the surface is smooth, I check it by running my fingers over any imperfections I might see and manually smooth those out. Now the sides of your canvas might have dripped some excess gesso, and you can simply wipe that off with your hands, with a paper towel, and just smooth that out. Now, once you have your edges nice and clean and your surface is smooth, you're going to want to lay it on a flat surface and let it dry for about 15 to 30 minutes for most cases. And then what I like to do is repeat the process maybe a second time and even a third time if it's a little bit more of a coarse textured canvas. So I'm going to let this dry and go for at least another second, and then we'll see about a third. Now, when you're applying your second or third layer of gesso on top of your first layer, the first thing that you'll notice is it has a tendency to tack up or dry faster, and that's because that gesso is very absorbent. And so once you lay down that additional layer, those second layers are going to be absorbed and they're going to start drying much quicker as that first layer did. And so it takes a little bit more precaution, takes a little bit more manual labor, especially around the edges, to just make sure that they're nice and smooth and cleaned up. And so I'll actually use my finger much more on the second layer, right on top of the canvas surface itself, and just smoothing out and perfecting any of those areas that have tacked up already. All right, so after adding the second layer of gesso, I'm actually super happy with how this feels right now. It's much smoother than when I started with. That grainy and that coarseness to it is all gone, and there's just a slight amount of texture left in this, which is perfect. I do want a small amount of texture because what that's gonna do is, although we want it to be smooth, to blend paints easier, we also want a small amount of texture on the other hand, just so that the paint is pulled off of the brush easy as well. So there is a fine balance between becoming too smooth and actually losing the benefits of that small amount of texture. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope this helped clear up any confusion and helped answer any questions that you had about the canvas that I use and how I prep the surface If you guys had any questions, please be sure to leave them in the comments below. And I'm sure the rest of the community would love to hear your thoughts and your insight. Maybe if you guys had any advice on how to prep a canvas a different way, I'm sure that would be much appreciated. So please leave anything and everything in the comments below. I always appreciate you guys' support. And on that note, if you guys would like to support my channel, please check out my free print giveaway, as well as my eBay auctions and website, and all of those links are in the description below. Thank you again so much for watching. We'll see you next time.